Welcome to another overview of the rarest birds in the Netherlands. With a full-time job, two small children and a video year list, there's unfortunately sometimes just not enough time to fully keep up with these rarities updates. But I know that many of you mainly watch for these updates, so whenever I can, I pick it up again. That's why we now have a slightly delayed overview of August. In this version, I'll go through each province separately, which means that the more regional highlights will also get some extra attention. We start in Friesland and go from top to bottom. We begin on August 1st with the white-rumped sandpiper. In the month of August, two more were seen in the Netherlands, and both only in the province of Friesland. One of the birds was only seen occasionally at the high tide roost near Westhoek. From the past, we know that the same bird or birds use multiple high tide roosts, such as on Texel, the Balgzand, Westhoek, Zwarte Haan, all the way to the Lauwersmeer. In this case, after also being seen a few times in July, the bird was now seen every day up to and including August 3rd. The other bird was the one at the wetland area near Oudega. This was also a bird that had been discovered in July. It made things quite tricky for observers by walking very close to the reeds. There was mudflat there that could only be checked by standing right at the highest point of the viewing platform, and even then, the bird would completely disappear behind the reeds. This bird was seen for the last time on August 8th. Pacific golden plovers were also still seen in decent numbers in Friesland. Although none of the several July birds seemed to stay directly, they were either refound or perhaps these were entirely new birds. For example, on August 3rd, a bird was found during falling tide at the Bandpolder, a spot where a bird had also been seen in July. According to the finders, based on plumage features, it was probably a different bird. A nice illustrative photo showing the search image was added to the sighting. Notice, for example, the smaller body of the bird and also the strikingly white coverts, while the surrounding European golden plovers all show some golden patterning here. On the 22nd, there turned out to be another Pacific golden plover on Schiermonnikoog. Due to lack of time, the bird had to remain unidentified for a moment, but the next day it turned out with certainty to be a Pacific golden plover. However, it was no longer in the meadow, but now foraging on the mudflats. The bird was reported for the last time on the 26th. On August 8th, the last day the white-rumped sandpiper at Oudega was seen, a black-winged predicle dropped by briefly in the afternoon. It was found by, among others, Mark Schuurman, who had also been the first to spot the white-tailed lapwing at the Eesemerkeeg. Great summer, Mark! On the 30th, another predicle species was seen flying over the highway south of Heerenveen, but more on that in future episodes. On August 9th, a whole group of birders was once again scanning the waders at Westhoek. No white-rumped sandpiper around this time, but suddenly an intriguing golden plover flew in. Two separate groups immediately noticed the bird as something special. After quickly taking some photos and having a good look, the bird could soon be identified as an American golden plover. Yet another one this year, and certainly not the last. On August 10th, a potentially very good species was found. After a tip that large numbers of waders were present near Stiens, Rudy Vatma went to take a look. From the height, he saw a large brown falcon approaching and managed to photograph it immediately. Thoughts went straight to a Saka falcon, which, if accepted, would be only the second record for the Netherlands. The Saka falcon population is increasing in Eastern Europe thanks to conservation projects, and sightings in Western Europe are becoming more frequent. However, one always needs to be cautious with escape falcons, both pure Sakas, similar looking Lanners, and even hybrids. The light feathers around the legs might actually suggest Lanner falcon, a species thought to have less frequency potential. How reliable that feature is, I'm not sure. The bird also appeared to show a ring, which could suggest a captive origin, though many wild Sakas are now also ringed through these conservation projects. Scientific rings are different from breeders' rings, but unfortunately there's too little detail in the photos to be certain, let alone to identify the type of ring. There have been multiple Saka reports across Western Europe this summer, from a confirmed escape in England to a probable wild bird in France. Given all the uncertainties, I think the chances of acceptance for this bird are rather small, but I'd be happy to be surprised. In any case, well found by Rudy. That same day, Rick and Mark de Rink found a black-winged kite late in the evening at the Vogellohe Veen. No longer the mega rarity it once was, but still a beautiful bird and fantastic to find one yourself. The next morning, the bird was still in the area, but only visible from a great distance. After that, it disappeared, which is quite typical behavior for a migrating black-winged kite. The early autumn of 2025 is proving to be very good for greenish warblers. I actually think we've only found a small portion of the birds that were around. A species that unfortunately I've never managed to film myself. There were multiple records from Schiermonnikoog and Terschelling, and surely there must have been a few on the other islands as well. On Friesland, one was also recorded, but that was a ringing record, so it doesn't really count. But how is it that they were found on one island and not on another? Let's start with the Schelling. Every year at the end of August, a youth nature camp is organized there by the NJN, and some very keen and sharp birders take part. People who really know how to pick out rare warblers from the mixed flocks. Put a group like that on a warden island at just the right time, and it's almost a guarantee for success. It started on the 18th, when the first bird was found by Pim Rijk and Hugo Wielman. The next day, another bird was found in the dunes by a different group, which later moved south and was refound a bit further down. The bird remained there until the morning of the 20th. On the 24th, another bird was found much further southwest. Of course, it could have been the same bird moving around, since the dates don't overlap. But given the observations on other islands, there might just as well have been new individuals. The next day, a bird was found further east on the island, and on the 26th, another group found yet another one even further east, bringing the total to 5 greenish warblers in just 9 days. If you were one of the finders of any of these birds, please let me know in the comments below. A short story about the discovery would be greatly appreciated. Now Schiermonnikoog. The first field observation was on the 24th in the woods northeast of the campsite, by Wouter van der Ham, Wouter Monster and Jesse Cinema. On the same day, Raoul Beunen found another bird in a completely different spot east of the bunker. This bird turned out to have already been ringed on the 18th on the same island. Really cool to be able to document the range and stay of a bird like this. The bird that was found in the woods near the campsite was seen there for the last time on the 26th. The bird from the woods north of the ringing station, however, stayed much longer and was occasionally heard or seen in the area around the station, and even caught again more than a month later. But that's for the September rarity overview. So is that all for Friesland? Definitely not, because the NJN camp managed to dig up another quality rarity, another typical late August species, a juvenile citron wagtail. The bird spent most of its time in the saltmarsh vegetation on the south side of the island, but was also occasionally seen inland. It was found on August 20th, which seems to be a classic date for the species. The next day it was not seen, but on the 22nd it turned out to be still present. There were also a few reports from the 23rd, but no photos. On August 25th and 28th, there were 2 additional uncertain reports, with the latter one having the description "song based on Merlin." So how reliable that is, I'll let everyone decide for themselves. On August 23rd, Patrick Scholter and Rick de Ruiter found a nice Terex sandpiper on the tidal mudflats near Pearsons. Unfortunately, the bird turned out to be not twitchable, meaning 2025 once again looks like a year without a twitchable Frisian Terex sandpiper. That same day, Marcel Stienstra, Robert Casimir and Andries Zijlstra saw possibly Scopolis ocoris shearwater flying far offshore past Ameland. From a listing perspective, it only really counts if the bird is close enough for photographic proof of the amount of white in the base of the primaries. And even then, there are still plenty of critical voices who think it's a step too far to identify these birds as species. But for the adrenaline rush you get when something like that flies through your scope view, it hardly matters. Finally, Friesland did very well this year with aquatic warblers, with no fewer than 2 twitchable birds, and the one along the IJsselmeer coast was even twitchable for multiple days. The province of Groningen had a bit less to offer, not least because the best species were once again found on inaccessible warden islands. Just like Friesland, Groningen also had rare golden plovers, 2 American ones to be precise. The first was a leftover from July, at the Punt van Rijden near the Breedwatpolder. It was seen there up to and including the third, often at a great distance, among other golden plovers. On August 26th, however, a very tame second calendar year bird appeared at the Rommelhoek of the Eemshaven. The Rommelhoek is a patch of mudflat that only floods at very high tides, where lots of washed up debris remains. This American golden plover did not join the other golden plovers further inland in the polder, but foraged all by itself, usually along the edge of the dike and the mud, often searching between the debris. The bird truly did not care at all about the birders, who often had to step back so the bird could continue foraging, and also so it wouldn't come within the minimum focus distance of the camera gear. And with that, we've already reached the end of the rarities on the mainland. On Rottermerplaat, however, there was still more to be found. It started off rather calmly with 2 greenish warblers on August 17th. During the following 3 days, only 1 bird remained. The real highlight came on August 20th, on a morning with northeast wind and occasionally showers, perfect conditions for lots of birds in the bushes. And that's exactly what happened. With dozens of willow warblers, but not only that, there was a young bunting among them, and especially the amount of streaking on the head most strongly suggested black-headed bunting. The birders in Groningen have been eagerly waiting for a twitchable individual of this species, although a red-headed bunting wouldn't be bad either. Even though parts of North Holland are further north than Drenthe, we'll first finish the top of Holland. When you think of Drenthe, you don't normally think of national mega-rarities, due to its inland location, but more of local gems such as Kentish plover, black-leg kittiwake or white-bellied brent goose. However, this month there really was a national rarity. On the 19th, a woodchet shrike showed up in the Dwingelde Veld. This year has been very good for woodchet shrikes, so it's great that Drenthe gets to join the fun. The bird was quite far away in a restricted area, but could still be enjoyed nicely with a scope. The next day, the bird was only reported once. In addition, Drenthe was also honored by a visit from a black-winged kite, and not just any black-winged kite, but a bird that had been present in the Netherlands since May, and now has moved on from Overijssel into Drenthe. The bird was discovered on the 25th near Langelo, and was quickly refound because at Rauwveen it had been seen in the morning on the 25th. We know it's the same bird due to a hole in its right wing. It remained at Langelo until the 28th, after which it disappeared. On August 30th, during a harrier roost count, a black-winged kite was very likely seen in the Onlanden. The next day, it could be confirmed that there was indeed a black-winged kite in the Onlanden. More on this bird in the September update. A species that many coastal birders wouldn't even blink at, but that is far from annual in Drenthe, is the common scoder. On August 16th, 1 male was seen at the Dwingelde Veld. Another seabird that showed up was a juvenile black-leg kittiwake on August 10th in a sand extraction lake near Hogesmilde. Before we move on, let me know in a comment under the video what you think of this province by province layout. Then North Holland. It's getting a bit repetitive, so I'll keep it short. On August 1st, an American golden plover was seen on the mudflats on Texel. Based on plumage features, it couldn't immediately be linked to any of the earlier birds on the island. That American golden plover was actually found while the observer, Job ten Hoorn, was watching a Pacific golden plover. And that Pacific golden plover was also a different individual than the one that had already been present on the island for a long time, the one you see here on screen. The next day, that well-known bird was seen at the Bull for the last time. On the 3rd, a peculiar-looking golden plover was photographed at New Buitenheim, also in Texel. But whether this is just a dark European golden plover or something rarer, I wouldn't dare say based on the photos. Then on the 7th, another Pacific golden plover popped up in a field in the middle of the island. It is starting to make my head spin trying to keep track of all these rare golden plovers. Which ones are the same and which are different. Either way, they're showing up so often now that if you want to find one yourself for your self-found list, you've actually got a decent chance these days. Then something that's also starting to feel a bit boring, the lesser scarp at the Vogelmeer. But yeah, it's still technically a mega rarity according to the books, so I'm just putting it in the overview again. North Holland also didn't escape the greenish warbler, because on August 20th, almost trapped and ringed, so as twitchers, we've got nothing out of it. A much more interesting bird is the greatest sandplover that Arie Kolders and Job ten Hoorn found independently of each other on the mudflats near Texel. This stunning bird, still partly in summer plumage, could only be watched for 45 minutes before it flew off and was never seen again. Could it be the same bird that was hanging around the island in 2021 and 2022, also disappearing now and then and suddenly showing up elsewhere? And does it maybe spend the rest of the time somewhere else in the Wadden Sea? Interesting theories. On August 31st, a black-winged predincle was seen near Groningen. It could very well have been the same bird as the one on August 8th in Friesland. Or maybe the predincle species on the 30th in Friesland. But it could just as easily be a new individual. Unfortunately, still not twitchable this year. Also, on the last day of the month, a southbound black guillemot was seen at Kamperduin, already well into mold into winter plumage. In Flevoland, on August 26th, a molding lesser scorp was found in the Zwarte Meer. The bird was also seen again on the 30th. Furthermore, the pygmy cormorant was present the entire month in Natuurpark Lelystad. Earlier in this video, I already talked about the blackwing kite that crossed over from Overijssel to Drenthe. In this area, a blackwing kite had already been seen in May, then not for months, but they're being noticed so frequently now that it's quite possible sighting elsewhere in between also referred to the same bird. The well-known bird from Rauwveen became nicely twitchable from August 9th onwards. That's when it turned out the bird had a hole in its right wing. But when this happened, and whether it was already visible on the bird in May, is unknown to me. Another nice species in the same area was a great snipe, found during a plant survey on the 31st. In 2023, a great snipe was also seen in this area, and that report mentioned it was only the second in several years. So apparently, a great area for the species. There's a good chance it will soon no longer require Rarity Committee assessment, which is great for a bird that is often only seen when it's flushed. Also in Overijssel, a black-leg kittiwake showed up, an adult on August 3rd. On the 4th, the bird was found exhausted and taken to a rehabilitation center. How things ended for the bird? I don't know. Then South Holland, perhaps the province with the highest bird density in the Netherlands, including quite a few fanatical searches. And once again this month, some very good species were found. We start with the blackwing kite. No fewer than 3 different sightings in the province. On August 3rd, one at Lentevreugd. On August 8th, one flying over Oud-Beijerland. And on August 26th, another bird was found at Kwadehoek, which was twitchable all day, but was not seen again the next day. Another good species at Kwadehoek was a probable black-headed bunting on the 25th. However, I suspect the documentation will unfortunately be insufficient for acceptance, but it was certainly an exciting bird. On the 26th, in the Oostvoorne area, once again in closed-off terrain, another great snipe was found. This species is now well on its way to no longer require assessment in the near future. August 26th turned out to be an excellent day for rarities in South Holland, because during a search for a spotted crake in the Eendrachtspolder in Zevenhuizen, a western swamp hen was discovered, in exactly the same spot where the second ever for the Netherlands was seen in December 2021. We know that birds are extremely good at returning to specific areas year after year to breed or to overwinter. So it's very possible that this is the same individual again, that perhaps, due to water levels in its breeding grounds, was forced to look for a different feeding area, and maybe still remembered this excellent spot. The bird remained present for the rest of the month. Also in South Holland, several aquatic warblers showed up again this year. A nice record was a ringed bird in the Eendrachtspolder, which stayed for 2 days, and then the next day a completely unringed bird suddenly appeared. Additionally, birds were photographed around Reewijk, and there was one bird in the Biesbos that was unfortunately not identified in time. Utrecht also did not escape the blackwing kite. On August 7th, one was found in the afternoon in Schalkwijk, and it remained until late in the evening. However, the next morning it was still seen, around 10:20 when it took off and was never seen again. In Gelderland, quite a few nice species were seen as well. The first one is not a mega rarity on the national scale, but it was a very interesting record. At Rijnstangen, a corn bunting was seen earlier this year in May. On August 6th, there was a report of 4 corn buntings in the same area, with the note that it involved 2 adults and 2 juveniles. That could indicate a very rare breeding case of this species in the Netherlands. Unfortunately, the sighting was not documented and no follow-up observations were made. Gelderland also did not escape the influx of black-winged kites, with a photographed bird on the Iederheef on the 10th. Whether the photo unequivocally shows a black-winged kite, I dare not say, but it certainly looks like it. However, no follow-up sightings came from that bird. Almost at the same moment, another bird was found in the Ooipolder, which was switchable the next day as well. On August 15th, yet another bird flew over Epe. The real highlight was the ring-billed gull, found by Jeroen Nachtegaal while feeding gulls to reed rings. The bird was seen in Arnhem, and if I remember correctly, this is already the 3rd ring-billed gull found by the same birder. This means that Jeroen is very good at finding ring-billed gulls, but also that the rest of birding Netherlands needs to step up its game. The bird could be twitched until the evening, after which it flew off to the southeast. The next day, the bird was absent, but on the 26th it was back again, and after that, no further sightings of the bird. The biggest highlight, however, was the capture of a green warbler, already the 4th case in 5 years in the Netherlands. Yet there are still plenty of birders who would love to see a truly twitchable individual. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible here. Even in other Northwest European countries, the species has been noticed more frequently in recent years. But the exact reason for this increase is not entirely clear to me, because when reviewing all the records of the greenish warbler, a very similar species, there were no misidentified green warblers among them. Also, it is not known that the population is currently undergoing an explosive growth. It wasn't until August 8th that the first aquatic warbler in the country, and therefore also in Gelderland, appeared at Arkenheim. Another bird was present on the 13th, which was also briefly seen on the morning of the 14th. Finally, on the 16th and 20th, there were also undocumented birds. Now we move to the southwesternmost province of the country, Zeeland, where the influx of black-winged kites first began. On August 3rd, a bird was found near Ossenisse, and it was still present the next day. One of the twitchers, to his great surprise, found a second bird nearby, clearly recognizable because it still had juvenile feathers, whereas the first bird did not. Later, both birds were seen together. From the 7th to the 10th, only the older bird was observed. On the 11th, 2 birds were again picked up above Westerschouwen. On the 12th, 1 bird was briefly seen near Biervliet. How many different birds there were in total in Zeelandic Flanders is unclear to me. In theory, it could have been just 2 birds, but up to 5 individuals is equally possible. After that, things were quiet for a while, until August 26th, when another bird appeared in Zeelandic Flanders, seen until August 30th. Another rarity in Zeeland in August was his black guillemot, which has also appeared in one of my vlogs. Unfortunately, it was never really at its best, because when its body feathers were all black, it had stops for primaries, and now that the primaries are growing in nicely, the body feathers are already molting into winter plumage. Yes, that's what you get with second calendar year birds. In North Brabant, the Rosses goose, which was discovered near Breda on July 30th, was still present. The bird spent most of its time in the company of greylag and greater Canada geese at Astedplas. Over time, many Rosses geese have escaped, as shown by the numerous sightings of birds with breeder rings. On the other hand, the Netherlands has also had a proven wild Rosses goose. There is also an example of an accepted bird, from August 22nd to September 12th, 2014 near Zeerskerke. So it's entirely possible that the bird near Breda will also be accepted, although the cDNA is still reviewing all cases between 2014 and 2023. Of course, in North Brabant we also had black-winged kites. On August 6th, 1 flew over the Krijnbergse plassen. On August 9th, a bird appeared near Leende and 2 at Campina. These 2 birds departed the next day around 8:30 am, but on the evening of August 11th, another bird was seen near Valkenswaard, not far from Leende. It left early the next morning. The best species for North Brabant, however, was a lesser spotted eagle, found on August 12th near the border with Zeeland. The bird carried a ring that could be tracked back to East Germany, the closest breeding location to the Netherlands. The bird lingered for a while and could be nicely photographed, but unfortunately it was present just a bit too short to be truly twitchable. In the final province, Limburg, a juvenile black-leg kittiwake appeared. The bird was seen by only one observer near Milsbeek. In 2023, 2 were seen, and in 2022, 1 bird was twitchable for a single day. But before that, none had been seen for 11 years. Additionally, on August 11th, there was a record of a woodchat strike, with the description noting not only the head pattern, but also the striking white shoulder patches. However, the bird disappeared quickly, and no follow-up observations are known. No photo was provided. In the nature reserve De Banen near Nederweert, where I personally saw black-crowned night herons for the year list in late spring, a juvenile marsh sandpiper appeared, the first in 5 years for the province. In Limburg, however, there was no twitchable black-winged kite, only a flyover at the now famous migration watch point at Walwiller. That's it for this round. Until next time.